I've been in here most of my life. I'm an institutional man now. It's like Brooks was.
Wow, you underestimate yourself.
I don't think so. In here, I'm the guy who can get things for you, sure, but outside, all you need is the yellow pages. Hell, I wouldn't even know where to begin. Pacific Ocean? Shit. About scare me to death, something that big.
Not me. I didn't shoot my wife, and I didn't shoot her lover. Whatever mistakes I made, I paid for them and then some. That hotel, that boat, I don't think that's too much to ask.
I don't think you ought to be doing this to yourself, Andy. This is just shitty pipe dreams. I mean, Mexico is way the hell down there, and you're in here, and that's the way it is.
Yeah, right. That's the way it is. It's down there, and I'm in here. I guess it comes down to a simple choice, really. Get busy living, or get busy dying.
Get busy living or get busy dying.
Well, that's an interesting phrase, is it not? Get busy living or get busy dying. And for those who haven't seen the movie Shawshank Redemption, you probably could pick up a little bit of it right there. You have two men stuck in a prison. Both had been convicted of murder. One was innocent, one wasn't. And in this case, Red did not feel that he would ever get out of prison. He had been denied parole before, was likely going to be denied parole again. He's black. Andy Duchesne, the banker, had been a successful banker. He was white. And both were, in essence, lifers, stuck in this prison in Maine. And yet Andy, as you can tell, even from what he was saying, was a man of hope and still a man of dreams. And on the other hand, Red just kind of felt like, don't do this to yourself. Don't do this to yourself. And sometimes I'm sure in life we see dreams didn't come true, and we probably feel frustrated by such things as well. But there in that prison, this deep friendship was born. And it lasted all the time until Andy Duchesne escaped from prison. And one day they would have a reunion, and I guess you'd have to watch the movie if you haven't seen it yet to figure out all the details on that. I understand a little bit about what they were talking about because several years ago I had the opportunity to go to Angola prison, which for many years had a reputation as being absolutely the worst prison in the United States. The people that are stuck there, like these two, would be stuck for life. Some of them would have been drug abusers, but still, it was a tough place. Until a warden came in, Burl Cain, who decided to change the environment. And his love for Jesus created a different environment there. He began to offer church services. It's a big campus there down in Louisiana. And began to offer church services. And you could see men whose lives began to change. And within that prison, and behind those prison gates and walls, you could also see these friendships of people who'd come to faith. They had a new sense of brotherhood. And they would stick together as brothers because they had something so strongly in common. They had their faith. This afternoon at about 2 o'clock, I'll have a Zoom call. I'll have a Zoom call that I'll be meeting with 7 other men who I have known, kind of like these guys here, I have known since 1991 when I moved to Pittsburgh. And I formed this small group of guys. And we stuck together during my time in Pittsburgh, and here we have been apart now in various places in different states, and yet we get together about every couple of years down at Myrtle Beach, hang out together for 2 or 3 days with our wives, and have this sweet time of fellowship and true friendship is marked by what? By the ability just to pick up the conversation, no matter where you are, how long you've been apart. And so we're able to do that, and we still remain friends because we have stuck together. Well, we are going to talk about stickiness today. I brought a quick visual aid about the subject of stickiness. I think on the back of this is actually one of the greatest inventions, and I'm not alone in this, in the last 50 years. You can maybe see there's two of them. One is on top of the other. These are known as Post-it notes. I love Post-it notes. But I have two versions. I have the regular Post-it note on top, and then I have the super sticky version on the bottom. But both of these are attached to something else. You know what this is? This is fly paper. We put these in our offices here at the church to catch bugs or even mice. And I put my coat, not this one, another one, on the back of my door here at the church. And we have one of these right down below. And early on, after they'd put this down there, my coat fell off the hook and landed the sleeve on the fly paper. So that's a little tough to pull it off. No, it's impossible virtually to pull it off. That stuff is like mega sticky. And I actually tore the sleeve of my jacket and ruined it just getting it off of this fly paper. But my friend, that is sticky. And that's what we're going to be talking about today, stickiness. And here to lead that discussion for us, hopefully your notes are ready to go. You got coffee. If you need more, it's out there. We have donuts as well for you this morning. We have a couple of friends who are joining us for the first time today. So let's give our welcome to our friend John Bell.
Well, I've said good morning to you, and I'll say it again. Good morning. Great to see you. We're going to talk about being sticky, and we're going to talk about relationships and friendship. But you should see right now, as I'm looking at you, my eyes are lighting up. That's what happens. It happens automatically. When you see someone that you love to be with, your eyes actually light up, and they pick that up. And their eyes light up. And there's this back and forth that takes place in our lives. Honestly, a lot of people go through life with just dull eyes. And I think as men, we need to lead the way on this. And so we're going to talk about that. We're going to talk about that deep joy that comes out of genuine relationship, okay? And I'm going to introduce you to a new word today. We'll get to that. But let me begin with an experience that I had in my 20s. I had a friend, and he was a deep-sea diver, and he felt like I should become a deep-sea diver. So he taught me in a swimming pool how to dive. Now, I want to use that diving experience to illustrate and to teach us about relationships. So what can you learn from scuba diving that would impact your relational life? Well, the first is what's called the buddy system. The buddy system. One of the things that you have to do as you're learning scuba diving is they send you down and they give you one tank of air, and you have to share it with another diver. And that's called the buddy system. There's only one tank and only one mouthpiece, and you have to be willing to share back and forth that one tank. I sometimes tell couples that I'm doing premarital counseling with, you should go in a deep sea dive with this future spouse, and that will tell you whether or not you're willing to share, because you can't panic. You've got to be panic-proof, and you've got to be willing to share, and you've got to be willing to see when the other person is in trouble. So that's the first thing about relationships. You have to be someone who is going to give and take. Share back and forth. Be willing to be fair to the other person. Not always taking the last piece, or the biggest piece. And then the second thing, and this one of the things he did was he showed me how to put the mask on, but he didn't spend a lot of time with that. It's just a few minutes. This is how you put the mask on, which I would think was really, really important. What he spent a lot of time on was what's called clearing your mask. Clearing your mask means that when you're underwater, sometimes, there's leaking into your mask and your mask gets full of water. Now you've got to clear your mask underwater so that you don't drown in your mask. And so he spent an amazing amount of time. We went over and over. Here's how you clear your mask. And then we had to do it underwater. What is clearing your mask? Well, I compare that to being joyful. You should go around and you should be relational. Being relational. And part of being relational is being filled with joy. You need to be filled with joy. And joy comes from being with people who love being with you. But as important as it is to be relational and to keep your relational circuits on, one of the things you're going to find in relationships is that your relational circuits are going to go off. And you got to clear your mask. You've got to get your relational circuits back on. You've got to do what we call return to joy. And you've got to learn how to return to joy in the midst of all kinds of negative emotions. There are 6 negative emotions that are in your brain, and they're hardwired. Anger, fear, sadness, shame, disgust, and despair. You've got to know how to return to joy in the midst of all of those, either one or combination of negative emotions. And how do you do that? Well, we kind of practiced an exercise last week, and we called it gratitude. And when you mix joy with any of those emotions, that emotion may not leave you, by the way. You might be angry, and you can still return to joy. And that's to me like clearing your mask when you are deep sea diving. Here's maybe the most important thing I'm going to say this morning. It's the very first fill-in, number 2. The easiest way to find out if a man is mature is by attempting a relationship with him. That's really important. If you want to know your emotional maturity level, you can measure it by your relationships. A 5-year-old can have a relationship with another 5-year-old. But if you're 35 and you're looking for kind of a give and take in a genuine relationship, if you're 35, it's hard to have a relationship with a 5-year-old. You can have a relationship, but it's only going to travel one way. It's adult to child. But again, this is like what I talk about when we do premarital. I tell the couple, listen, you need to measure each other's maturity, and you need to help each other with that maturity. And you both need to know the age of the other person. Jim Wilder, who's a psychiatrist and a theologian, he says that most couples, when they get married, the woman is the age of a little girl. And here's what's scary. And the man is the age of a boy, or the age of an infant. The age of an infant. So here's what we want to do. I want to go through the stages of maturity, and I want you to be able to recognize maturity and immaturity. So let's just talk about 5 stages. Over the course of your life, and relationships, again, relationships reveal maturity, and immaturity. The very first stage is 0 to 4, and we call that the beginning stage or the infant stage. Here's what's supposed to happen. This is the way God designed our brains to work. During those 4 years, we need strong, loving bonds, and we need to have all of our needs met by someone else. You know what infants do better than anything else? They let you know if something's wrong. They let you know if something's wrong, and they expect you to do something about it. Sad to say, there's a lot of men walking around, and they will let you know when something's wrong, and they expect you to do something about it. This is that time where you learn security. You're in a safe place. This is because you learn to receive, which is the first thing you have to learn. You have to learn to receive, and when you learn to receive, then you learn to give. You can't give until you've received. So the first stage is that beginning stage, that infant stage. Then the second stage is 4 to 12. 4 to 12. This is a wonderful time of life. Probably for a boy, this is where we all go back to, isn't it? Because this is a time of discovery. It's a time of exploration, imagination. Here's what's really important, and you'll be able to measure whether a person is an adult and they've successfully navigated through childhood because they know how to do hard things. Can you do hard things? You know, if mom is the primary caregiver in those first 4 years, because she has incredible nurturing skills, dad has to nurture, but mom is the primary. From 4 to 12, it's usually dad. And it's dad because he's making you do hard stuff. And again, we live in a world today in which there are a lot of adults, so-called men, really infants with big bodies, and they don't know how to do hard stuff. I'll never forget a line that Tom Landry used to use when he was coaching the Dallas Cowboys. He would gather all the new players, and this is what he would say to them: I'm going to make you do what you've always hated to do so that you can become the player you've always wanted to be. That's knowing how, you'll know if you have navigated through because you'll be able to do hard stuff. It's also a time, last of all, it's also a time of identity formation. You discover who you are. And you discover that actually other people kind of speak into your life. And this is a time where boys, when they have peers, healthy peers, they stretch one another. They explore together. They grow together. And you kind of find out where you fit in. The next stage is from 12 up until marriage. And this is what's today called adolescence. You know, in the whole history of the world until the beginning of the 20th century, there was no such thing as adolescence. 12 marked the beginning of adulthood. And this is where you find a group identity. From 4 to 12, you're finding your individual identity. From 12 up until marriage or marriageable age, now you're finding a group identity. And you're protecting that group, and you're bonding with peers. You're part of a community. You learn to protect. You learn to negotiate, and you learn to negotiate in a fair way so that it's win for you and win for the person that you're negotiating with. So this is that time, and this is really about becoming a man. Then The next stage is parenting, and it doesn't just apply to biological children. It applies to caring for other people. Basically, you now become a life giver to people in the first 3 stages. You can mature an infant. You can mature a boy. You can mature a young adult. This is the time where you can give and you don't have to receive. No need to receive. Why? Because you've been given. Up until now, your needs have been met, you've established your identity, and you've grown into manhood. Now you're ready to become a life giver. And I'll tell you something, men. Until you discover that that's the secret of manhood, you haven't discovered manhood. That's what we were made for. That's how God designed us. God designed us to give life. And then the last stage is what the scriptures call an elder. Now you have less energy, but you have more to give. And you basically become life-giving to a community. And during this stage, you actually have a community to call your own. And that community respects you. And you are able to mature and come alongside all of the other stages of life. This is the metamorphosis that you go through, these 5 different stages. And so you need to be able to look back on your life and say, you know, who I was when I was a boy, who I was when I was a young adult, who I was when I first became a parent, I continue to grow. I continue to mature. Let me read you some statements here. And again, these are fill-in. When a man expects someone else to take care of his needs, especially his emotional needs, he still